Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome back to the garden. If you can't tell, I'm a little extra excited about today's video because we are going to be starting some tomato seeds, which is one of my favorite things to do. And growing your own tomato plants from seeds like these is without a doubt the best way to up your gardening game this year. But I know it can also be a little bit complex, a little bit confusing, maybe even a little bit intimidating if you are new to the process. So I want to do something just a little bit different with today's video. I want to keep it really clear, really simple, and really concise. I'll just give you step-by-step instructions on how to turn these seeds into these beautiful seedlings. Plus, I think we're going to have a lot of fun doing it together. Let's start some seeds. I'm gonna be using just a 72 cell seedling tray, bog standard. You can get these at most garden centers, including at Walmart. Just a little tray to put underneath that. This one doesn't have holes. That's gonna be important later. We're gonna be using, well, some seeds, of course. I've got some from Johnny's right here. Johnny's is probably my favorite purveyor of seeds. They're a little bit expensive. If you want to shell out, if you want to splurge a little bit on your seeds this year, I definitely recommend trying Johnny's. They have incredible seeds with really, really good germination rates and all the best varieties. So yeah, definitely check them out. And then we're just gonna be using a store-bought bag of seed starting mix. Most really serious gardening YouTubers make their own seed starting mix. I actually generally don't. This stuff works really well. I picked this up at Tractor Supply. And honestly, if you can't find this stuff or you think it's a little too expensive, just a bag of decent potting soil works really, really well. So don't worry too much about it. Grab a bag of seed starting mix if you can find it, if that's in your budget, or just grab a bag of potting soil. The reason we have this stuff here is we're gonna add a little bit of extra fertilizer to our seed starting mix, just because I find that they tend to underfeed the plants and you run into some nitrogen issues. All right, so to get started, the first thing we need to do is actually pour out some of our seed starting mix or our potting mix into a bucket, into another container, and just put a little bit of fertilizer. I like to do about a quarter cup per tray. I'm gonna be doing 60 plants per tray, so about a quarter cup per 60 seedlings. We put it into a bucket, and then we're gonna also add a little bit of water and mix up this stuff with that water. This stuff is actually really, really super dry. It's so dry that it actually becomes hydrophobic over time, meaning it is challenging to get it to wet out, to get it moist once you put it into these containers. Much easier to get it to wet out, to get it nice and moist beforehand by putting it into a big bucket and kind of mechanically mixing it up really, really good. So that's exactly what we're gonna do. This looks pretty beautiful. It's nice and moist. You can see I can kind of ball it together, but it's not totally sopping wet. This is exactly what we want. So all I'm gonna do now is go ahead and pack full all of these little cells in our container. If you see any big chunks of wood like this, I'm gonna throw them out. One thing you do wanna make sure that you are doing though, make sure that each cell is nice and full. You can remove the extra dirt at the end, that's no big deal, but you really don't want to have any cells that are only like 2/3 full, and that's really easy to do. So go through here, make sure each one of these cells is actually full to the brim. Sometimes they can kind of trick you and look like they're full even when they're not. Now I'm just gonna kind of collect up, rake up the extra dirt here. No reason we should waste this stuff. Also gives you a chance to just make sure that if there's any cells remaining here that aren't as full as you'd like them to be, you can go ahead and pack a little bit of extra seed starting mix in there. I used to call this stuff dirt, right? You know, potting mix and seed starting mix, that kind of thing. I used to call it dirt just colloquially. I just think of it as dirt, but people were calling me out in the comments for being incorrect. So we're gonna call it soil, or we're gonna call it seed starting mix this time. If I mess up again, feel free to tell me in the comments what I should be calling it. Looks pretty perfect, but before we go wash our hands and start starting some seeds, one thing I want you to do is just come through each individual cell and make a really light indent in the very middle of the cell, or whatever type of container you're using, right? Like this, just like that, just shallow. Our nightshade seeds really don't need to be very deep. As you're going through this, it's really easy to do it too deep, so just try and keep in your mind that you're just planting tiny little seeds in here. So we're gonna keep it nice and shallow. But I do like to make sure that we're making little indents ahead of time for a couple of reasons. One, it's just gonna make it easier to see the seeds and make sure you don't accidentally overseed any of the cells, and just kind of keep track of where you've put your seeds. And two, it's just an easy way to get the seeds at the right depth. So what we can do is, once we put the seeds in each one of these little shallow indents, we'll come back and we'll just pinch the soil over from the sides, from around the indent, on top of that indent, and we will have seeds at the perfect depth. So the next thing I am going to do, and please tell me that it's not starting to rain on me, I'm going to look very foolish if I start on this process right before it starts to rain. I swear the forecast said no more rain, that it was just gonna be cloudy today. The next thing I like to do is just label the trays. A lot of people like to label each individual cell with the type of seed they're planting, and I think that's literal insanity. That is such a nightmare. It creates so much trash. So I just take a bit of painter's tape and a giant Sharpie. But anyways, I take some tape, I take a Sharpie, and I just label this tray 1. Literally, I am just writing the number 1 on one side of it, and that is going to be the front side of tray 1. Hey, it's me from the future. Quick request here. If you are learning something from this video, if you're getting excited to go start your own tomato seeds, would you mind just really quickly hitting that like button for me? Really, really, really helps out, makes all the difference in the world for me. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it. Let's get back to those seeds. I'm gonna go ahead and get out all the types of tomato seeds that I want to put in this tray, and I know exactly what that is by looking at my handy dandy spreadsheet. Hi, it's future me here once again to do a slightly better job of explaining how we keep track of the individual varieties that we plant in a given container. So, first case, let's say you are planting only one type of tomato, one variety in this whole tray. Then you're gonna do exactly what I showed before. Just write tray 1, and then you can write the variety. Let's say we're planting only yellow pear tomatoes, because let's say you've lost your mind and you want 72 yellow pear tomatoes for some horrible reason. Anyways, that's actually not the most common case. Most of the time, we're actually gonna be planting multiple varieties in a given container. So in that case, what we're gonna do, still write tray 1 right here, but then on a note, on our phone, on our computer, we're just gonna bring that up and do a spreadsheet or a doc, and we're gonna write tray 1, top 2 rows, yellow pear tomatoes. And in my case, actually, we did Granadero, next to Estiva, next to Big Beef Plus, next to black cherry tomatoes, whatever it is. That way I can always grab my phone, reference the tray number, and I know exactly what is planted in a given location. I don't have to deal with any of the trash or any of the confusion caused by those little plastic labels that never end up lasting the season. Anyways, that's how we do it. It works out really, really well if you want to try it yourself. These are that Granadero variety I mentioned from Johnny's. We're gonna go ahead and use all of them because, well, they didn't come with all that many seeds in the pack, even though the packet was sort of expensive. And I am only going to be planting 1 seed per cell. And I realize that's probably a little bit different than you have heard in the past. Good seeds from a truly great seed purveyor like Johnny's are gonna have a really good germination rates, north of 90%. So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to be putting 2, 3, 4 seeds in each one of these little containers. Normally what I'll do is either only 1 seed per container, or I'll do 1 seed in half of them and 2 seeds in the other half. And that's gonna make sure that I have more seedlings than I do containers. You really don't need to waste a ton of seedlings. This is where these indents come in so handy, because it's just really, really obvious which ones already have seed in them. And then we're just gonna literally repeat that process down the line, nothing to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish up this tray. Now these seeds are a couple years old, so I am going to double seed a few more of them because I don't expect to get quite as good of a germination rate. You know, pro tip here, make sure that you take your empty seed packets and put them in a separate place from the ones that still have seeds in them, because if you don't, you're going to think you still have seeds in them next year and you're gonna forget to order new ones to replace them. Or maybe that's just me. We've got 1 or 2 seeds in each one of our little cells at this point, so it is time to come back over and just gently pinch a little bit of the soil back over top that indent where the seeds are contained. And then after we pinch a little bit of soil back on top, we're just gonna just gently pat that soil down. We don't want the soil to be compact, but do not let it be too airy either. This is actually maybe the most important step if you want really good germination rates. You want that soil to have contact with the seed. We want seed to soil contact. So don't forget to just gently firm it down a little bit. All right, let's do it. Don't need a whole lot of soil on top of these, just a real thin layer. And as you're doing it, just kind of pay attention that you're not putting anything big on top of the seeds. It's not that big a deal if there's a few little bits of bark and wood chips in the mix itself, but you don't want any of those to end up on top of the seeds. We don't want anything to obstruct them being able to actually push up through the soil. Okay, and that is really the majority of the work done. Before we move on to the next step, I'm gonna go ahead and repeat this for another tray of tomatoes, basically our cherry tomatoes, as well as a tray of peppers and then a tray of eggplant and tomatillos. Once that is done, I will show you how to go ahead and get these set up inside your house or inside a protected area for, again, a really, really beautiful germination rate. Don't worry, next steps are also very, very easy. Fast forward a few minutes here and we are done. All 4 trays are seeded and ready to go, and they're looking really, really good. And the next step is a watering step. Part 1 of that watering step is we are going to just really gently, with a really fine mist, water down the very top of the tray, that top layer of soil that we put down over on top of the seeds. And our goal with this isn't really to moisten the soil so much, but just once more, pack down that soil that was on top of the seeds to make sure, again, that there's not too many air pockets there and help with germination. So we're gonna do that first. Alrighty, now that we've got this top layer of soil gently watered in, the next thing I want you to do is just add about ½ inch of water to this bottom tray, the one without holes, underneath the seedling tray. And what that's going to do is just allow the soil to soak up a little bit of moisture through capillary action, through wicking action, so that all of the soil in there is kind of evenly moist. And that way you're not having little pockets of dry and pockets of moist. That's just gonna make it easier to keep the tray well watered in the following weeks while we're trying to get these plants to germinate and grow strong. Whew. Apologies for the blinding backlight here. I'm in my garage where I start all of my seeds, and I just wanted to make sure there was enough light to actually film this video. Basically, now that we've got our seeds in the trays, all we need to do is put them on a nice warm surface. For that purpose, I'm going to be using this seedling heat mat. They're actually pretty affordable. If this is something you enjoy doing and you want to go out and grab your own, they work really, really well. Otherwise, you just need to find a warm surface, even if it's just a place that gets nicely warmed by the sunlight during the day. We're going to go ahead and place our tray onto that warm surface. And at that point, we're just going to let them be and wait to do their magic. Back to the garden. It's warmed up a little bit back here. The birds are singing again, which makes it kind of nice to be back here. Now that your tomato seeds are on the heat mat, the only thing you really need to know is that they're going to start popping up between 5 to 14 days from today. And at that point, the moment they pop up, you want to be getting them under some strong lights, either natural in a big, beautiful south-facing window or under some strong artificial lights like the ones you might have seen on my seed starting setup. If you leave those seedlings after they pop up out of that soil in darkness for even 12, 24 hours, you're really likely to run into an issue called etiolation or legginess, more colloquially. And I'm sure you've seen this before. Basically, your seedlings are going to grow tall and spindly and weak. They may not even survive. But even if they do survive, you're going to be having to kind of deal with getting them strong again throughout that process. Much, 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 much easier just to make sure that you're monitoring them and making sure that you get them under strong lights as soon as possible, right after they pop up out of that soil. Otherwise, we have a ton of videos on how to care for your tomato seedlings once they do pop up. I think this one in particular sort of has the 3 big factors that you need to pay attention to. Nothing super complex. We go through the exact steps you need to be looking out for to make sure that those tomatoes grow really, really healthy. So that's a good one to check out next if you want to be prepared for when they do pop out. We also have videos on how to transplant your tomatoes and how to care for your tomatoes and how to prune your tomatoes. We have a lot of tomato videos. I really like talking about this topic. Anyhow, I really hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you found it useful and educational, and I hope you are so excited to go out and plant some tomatoes of your own. And I hope you'll join us on our next video. And until next time, happy gardening, y'all.